Ma'am, this lounge is reserved for real wealth clients, not people looking for somewhere to sit. The sentence landed like a slap across the polished marble room at exactly 9:14 on a rainy Tuesday morning inside the private wealth floor of Westbridge Bank in downtown Chicago. Heads turned instantly. Coffee cups paused halfway to lips. Conversations died in place. And in the center of it all sat Maya Whitmore, calm, composed, dressed in a charcoal sweater, dark jeans, and simple leather flats that looked too ordinary for a room where everyone else wore designer labels and six-figure watches. Claire Benson stood near the entrance of the lounge with her arms folded tightly across her cream blazer, her expression sharp enough to cut glass. She wasn't whispering. She wanted everyone to hear it. "I already told you," Claire continued, her voice colder now. "This floor is restricted to verified clients." Maya slowly lifted her eyes from the tablet resting in her lap. She didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't even blink. That somehow made the room more uncomfortable. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." Now, back to Maya Whitmore. The Wealth Lounge itself looked like something out of a luxury real estate magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Michigan Avenue. Soft jazz floated through hidden speakers. The air smelled faintly of espresso and expensive cologne. Everything about the room whispered money. Old money. Quiet money. The kind of money that assumed it never had to explain itself. And yet somehow, Maya Whitmore sitting silently in a leather chair made Claire Benson deeply uncomfortable. A white banker named Derek Hall leaned casually against the espresso counter nearby, watching with a smirk that kept threatening to turn into a laugh. "Maybe she got lost downstairs," he muttered just loudly enough for others to hear. A couple seated near the windows exchanged uneasy looks. One older black gentleman slowly lowered his newspaper. A younger Latina financial advisor standing by the hallway froze in place, clearly debating whether to speak. Maya crossed one leg over the other and calmly asked, "Are you refusing to verify my appointment?" Claire gave a dry laugh. "Appointments don't magically appear because someone walks in here pretending to belong." The word belong hung in the air like smoke. Maya had heard that word before. At 26, a loan officer in Atlanta used it while denying her commercial financing despite her numbers being stronger than every applicant before her. At 31, a hotel manager in Boston used it while questioning whether her platinum card was stolen. Different buildings, different faces, same look in their eyes, same assumption beneath the smile. Derek stepped closer now, lowering his voice like he was trying to help. "Look, ma'am, there's a public banking area downstairs. This lounge handles high-net-worth clients only." Maya finally looked directly at him. Calm eyes, steady voice. "And what exactly do high-net-worth clients look like?" Derek opened his mouth, then stopped. Claire stepped in quickly before silence could expose too much. "Security has already been notified," she announced. "If you refuse to leave voluntarily, we'll escort you out." A ripple moved through the lounge. Not loud. Not dramatic, just enough tension to change the temperature in the room. Maya glanced toward the glass office doors across the hall where a junior associate named Jordan Ellis stood frozen beside a computer terminal, staring at something on the screen with widening eyes. Then Jordan looked at Maya, really looked at her, and suddenly the color drained from his face. Jordan Ellis could feel his heartbeat in his throat as he stared at the executive access screen glowing in front of him. The name on the schedule was impossible to ignore now. Maya Whitmore. Board-level verification. Priority authorization Tier 1. His fingers tightened around the edge of the desk as the reality settled in. The woman Claire Benson was trying to remove from the Wealth Lounge was not some random customer wandering into the wrong floor. She was tied directly to corporate leadership. Jordan glanced back toward the lounge area where Maya remained. Seated beneath the soft amber lights, calm as stone while the room around her slowly turned hostile. Claire noticed Jordan hesitating near the terminal and narrowed her eyes immediately. "Jordan," she snapped sharply, "if you are done staring into space, go back to processing the 11 o'clock files." Jordan swallowed hard. "Claire, I think there might be some confusion." The room shifted slightly at those words. Derek Hall rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath, "Here we go." Claire walked toward Jordan in quick, measured steps, her heels striking the marble floor like warning shots. There is no confusion, she said quietly through clenched teeth. She does not belong on this floor. Jordan lowered his voice. Her name is actually in the executive verification queue. Silence. Not loud silence. Dangerous silence. Derek stopped smirking. The older man near the windows folded his newspaper completely now. Even the espresso machine seemed too loud suddenly. Claire's expression hardened instantly. Anyone can fake a name in a system request, she replied without missing a beat. You are new here, Jordan. Do not embarrass yourself. Maya watched the exchange without interrupting. Her composure somehow made Claire more aggressive. People expected anger, defensiveness, pleading. Maya offered none of it. She simply sat there with the patience of someone who already knew how the story would end. A young investment client near the center table slowly stood up from his chair. If her name is in the system, he asked carefully, why not just verify the appointment? Claire turned toward him with the polished smile wealthy institutions perfected over decades. Sir, for privacy reasons we cannot discuss internal security procedures. The answer sounded smooth. It also sounded rehearsed. Maya finally spoke again, her voice low and steady. You keep using the word security when what you really mean is discomfort. Claire laughed once without humor. No, what I mean is protocol. Maya tilted her head slightly. Protocol usually requires facts first. Derek stepped forward before Claire could respond. Listen, ma'am, people work hard to gain access to spaces like this. We cannot just let anyone walk in claiming executive privileges. Maya looked directly at him. And what exactly about me makes you think I am claiming? Derek opened his mouth again, but nothing came out this time. The question landed too cleanly, too directly. Across the lounge, Jordan slowly stepped away from the terminal, his face pale now. He had worked at Westbridge for less than 8 months, but even he understood what executive tier access meant. Employees whispered about names like Maya Whitmore during training seminars. Entire regional structures answered to people at that level. And now Claire Benson was threatening to remove one from the building in front of witnesses. Claire suddenly pointed toward the elevators near the back hall. Last chance, she said firmly. Either you leave voluntarily or security will escort you out of the lounge. Maya looked around the room slowly, taking in every face watching her. The nervous clients. The silent staff. Jordan standing frozen near the terminal. Derek trying to recover his confidence. Claire clinging tightly to authority that was already beginning to crack. Then Maya calmly reached for her phone resting beside her tablet and unlocked the screen. Maya Whitmore unlocked her phone with slow, deliberate movements while the Wealth Lounge watched her like a courtroom waiting on a verdict. Claire Benson folded her arms tighter the moment she saw the screen light up. Calling somebody is not going to change policy, she said sharply. Maya did not look up. No, she replied calmly. But it may expose the people hiding behind it. The words slid through the room like cold steel. Derek Hall gave an uncomfortable laugh and looked toward the security desk near the elevators. This is getting ridiculous, he muttered. She acts like she owns the place. Maya pressed a number and lifted the phone to her ear. Across the lounge, Jordan Ellis looked ready to disappear into the marble floor itself. He kept glancing between Claire and the executive access screen still glowing behind him. The words board-level verification remained visible like a warning nobody wanted to acknowledge. After 2 rings, a woman answered on speaker. Office of Nora Hayes. Maya's voice stayed even. Nora, I am at the Westbridge downtown branch. A short silence followed. Then Nora's tone changed instantly. Sharp. Alert. Understood. Has the verification process begun? Maya looked directly at Claire when she answered. No. The branch manager chose removal instead. The room seemed to inhale all at once. Claire stepped forward immediately. Excuse me, she snapped. You are not authorized to record or discuss internal procedures in this facility. Maya lowered the phone slightly. Interesting, she said softly. You were comfortable discussing my removal publicly 2 minutes ago. Derek rubbed the back of his neck now, no longer smiling quite as much. A middle-aged white woman seated near the window quietly picked up her designer handbag and moved farther away from the confrontation, not out of fear of Maya, but discomfort with Claire. The atmosphere had shifted. The room no longer viewed Maya as an intruder. They were beginning to watch Claire instead. Nora's voice returned through the phone. Maya, corporate has no verification request logged as denied. Are you saying the branch refused to process executive clearance? Jordan looked down immediately the second those words echoed across the lounge. Claire's face tightened. "Who exactly are you talking to?" she demanded. Maya ignored her. "I want all branch access logs preserved starting at 9 o'clock this morning," Maya said calmly, "including lobby footage and employee terminal activity." Jordan's stomach dropped. Derek straightened away from the espresso bar. Claire took another step closer now, her composure thinning around the edges. "You cannot come in here making demands," she said louder this time. "This is a private financial institution." Maya slowly stood for the first time since entering the lounge. The movement alone changed the energy in the room. She was tall, controlled, completely unshaken. "That," she replied quietly, "depends on who is actually in charge." Nobody spoke. Even the soft jazz overhead suddenly felt distant. Claire tried to recover control quickly. "Mark," she called toward the security desk, "please escort this woman from the floor immediately." A tall security officer named Mark Reynolds approached with visible hesitation. Unlike Claire, he sensed something unraveling beneath the surface now. Maya turned slightly toward him before he could speak. "Before you touch my arm or ask me to leave," she said evenly, "I strongly recommend you ask your manager why corporate is preserving branch audit logs in real time." Mark stopped cold. Derek's confidence visibly cracked for the first time. Jordan finally found enough courage to speak again. "Claire," he said carefully, his voice barely above a whisper, "I really think we should verify her identity before this goes any further." Claire spun toward him instantly. Enough. But it was too late. The room had already heard the fear hiding underneath her anger. The Wealth Lounge no longer felt elegant. It felt exposed. Like the polished walls and soft lighting could no longer hide what was unfolding underneath them. Claire Benson sensed it too. That was why her voice kept getting louder. People losing control often mistook volume for authority. "Mark," she repeated sharply toward the security officer, "remove her now." But Mark Reynolds did not move immediately this time. His eyes drifted toward Jordan Ellis, who still stood near the terminal looking visibly shaken. Then he looked back at Maya Whitmore standing perfectly still beside the leather chair she had occupied since entering the lounge. There was no panic in her face. No desperation. Only patience. The kind that made experienced people nervous. Derek Hall tried to force a laugh into the silence. "This is insane," he said, glancing around the room for agreement that never came. "We are all standing here acting like this woman is some executive because she made one phone call." Maya looked toward him calmly. "No," she replied. "You are standing here because your assumptions are collapsing in real time." The sentence hit harder than anyone expected. A young financial consultant near the hallway quietly lowered her eyes. The older gentleman by the windows nodded almost imperceptibly. Even Claire seemed thrown off for half a second before snapping back into character. "Enough," she barked. "Jordan, log this incident as disruptive behavior and unauthorized access refusal." Jordan froze completely. His throat tightened. "Claire, I cannot do that." Her expression darkened instantly. "Excuse me." Jordan swallowed hard. "Because she does have authorized access." The room went silent all over again. A heavier silence this time. Derek stared at Jordan like he had betrayed the entire branch. Claire stepped toward him slowly, her smile gone now. "You are making a serious mistake." Jordan looked terrified but kept speaking anyway. "I checked the executive queue twice. Her clearance is real. Corporate assigned her direct verification status before 8:30 this morning." Claire's jaw tightened so hard it looked painful. Then the system was compromised. Maya almost smiled at that. "Almost. Interesting," she said quietly. "Every time the facts stop supporting your narrative, suddenly the system becomes the problem." Mark Reynolds shifted uncomfortably beside the elevators. He had worked security for private banking floors for nearly 12 years. Wealthy clients yelled, threatened lawsuits, demanded special treatment. Maya had done none of those things. She simply kept asking for verification while everyone else escalated around her. That difference was becoming impossible to ignore. Claire pointed toward Maya again. "She is manipulating this entire floor." A woman seated near the center table finally spoke up. "No," she said carefully. "From where I am sitting, it looks like she asked for basic respect." Claire looked stunned that a client had interrupted her. Derek immediately stepped in to help recover control. "Ma'am, you do not understand the security risks we deal with in private banking. The older black gentleman near the windows folded his newspaper onto the table beside him and spoke for the first time. I understand them just fine, he said calmly. I also understand exactly what profiling looks like. Nobody answered him. Because nobody could. Maya turned slightly toward Jordan now. Thank you, she said softly. Jordan looked down, embarrassed by how relieved he suddenly felt hearing those words. Claire noticed the shift immediately. The room was slipping away from her one witness at a time. She reached for the desk phone beside the espresso station and punched a number hard enough to echo across the marble counter. Corporate compliance, she announced loudly, almost defiantly. Let us see what they have to say about this. Maya slowly crossed her arms. Please do. Claire lifted the receiver to her ear, but before she could speak, the phone rang in her hand first. The sound sliced through the lounge so sharply that everyone looked up at once. Claire hesitated, then slowly answered. Claire Benson speaking. A pause. Her face changed instantly. Claire Benson's face lost color so quickly it looked as if the blood had drained straight through the marble floor beneath her heels. The phone remained pressed against her ear, but the confidence was gone now. Completely gone. Yes, she said carefully into the receiver. She is here. Silence followed. Claire listened. Not at once. Then again. Every person in the lounge watched her expression tighten inch by inch like glass beginning to crack under pressure. Derek Hall took a slow step closer. Claire, he whispered. She ignored him. Across the room, Maya Whitmore remained perfectly still, her arms folded lightly, as if she already knew every word being said on the other end of that call. The older gentleman near the window leaned back in his chair with quiet understanding. Jordan Ellis stopped pretending to organize files at the terminal. Even Mark Reynolds no longer stood in security posture. The room had changed sides emotionally before anyone admitted it out loud. Claire suddenly pulled the receiver away from her ear. This is highly irregular, she snapped into the phone, trying to sound authoritative again. No one informed branch management. Another pause. Then her face tightened harder than before. Understood. She lowered the receiver slowly onto the desk. Nobody spoke. Derek looked genuinely nervous now. What did they say? Claire did not answer immediately. Maya finally broke the silence herself. Corporate confirmed my verification request, did they not? Claire looked at her with visible frustration. They confirmed there was an executive review scheduled. Maya tilted her head slightly. And Claire hesitated. The hesitation itself became the answer. A younger client standing near the coffee station quietly muttered, "Wow." Claire heard it. Her composure slipped another inch. "This situation is being exaggerated," she said quickly to the room. "We were simply following security procedures." The older gentleman near the windows shook his head slowly. "No," he replied calmly. "You were following assumptions." That sentence landed heavier than Claire expected. Because it was true. And everyone in the room knew it now. Maya looked toward the city skyline beyond the glass for a brief moment. Rain slid slowly down the windows overlooking downtown Chicago, turning the streets below into blurred streaks of silver and gray. For a second, she remembered another rainy day almost 20 years earlier. A smaller bank branch in Detroit. Cheap heels hurting her feet after walking 6 blocks from a bus stop because her car had broken down the night before. A white loan officer had stared at her business proposal for less than 3 minutes before sliding it back across the desk. "These numbers are ambitious," he had said carefully. "People from your background usually struggle managing commercial risk." People from your background. Maya remembered the exact way those words felt. Clean on the surface, poison underneath. She had walked out of that office with $37 in her checking account and humiliation burning in her chest like fire. 3 years later, she bought the building that branch operated in. 7 years later, she owned controlling shares in the regional bank itself. And now here she stood again. Different room. Same assumptions. Derek suddenly laughed nervously, trying to lighten the atmosphere. "Okay, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here." Maya slowly turned her eyes toward him. "Interesting choice of words," she replied quietly. "Because from where I was sitting, it felt more like a knee on the neck of basic respect." Derek's smile vanished instantly. Claire stepped forward again, desperate to regain control of a situation already slipping through her fingers. "No one discriminated against you," she said firmly. Maya met her eyes without blinking. "Then ask yourself something," she answered calmly. "If I walked in wearing a tailored suit, carrying a platinum watch, and speaking with a different accent. Would this conversation even exist? Nobody answered. Not Claire. Not Derek. Not Mark. Not a single person in the lounge. Because deep down, every person there already knew the truth. And the silence finally said it out loud. The silence inside the Wealth Lounge stretched so long it almost became physical. Claire Benson stood frozen beside the marble counter, searching desperately for a way to regain authority that had already slipped out of her hands. Derek Hall avoided eye contact completely now, pretending to study the skyline outside the windows while tension crawled across his face. Mark Reynolds quietly stepped farther back toward the elevators, no longer eager to involve himself in what was rapidly becoming something much bigger than a routine removal. And in the center of all of it stood Maya Whitmore, calm enough to make everybody else uncomfortable. Her phone buzzed softly in her hand. She glanced down once before lifting it back to her ear. "Nora," she said evenly, "begin full branch review." Claire's head snapped up immediately. "You cannot audit a branch because your feelings were hurt." Maya looked at her without emotion. "No," she replied. "But I can audit one after watching policy become a costume for discrimination." The sentence landed hard. Jordan Ellis slowly sat down at the terminal behind him, his hands visibly shaking now as notifications began flooding across the internal system screen. Red compliance banners, executive access alerts, live review authorization requests. The kind junior associates almost never saw unless something catastrophic was unfolding above them. Nora's voice came through the phone again, calm and precise. "Corporate audit procedures are active. We are preserving all branch communications, internal messaging, camera feeds, and executive access logs." Claire immediately stepped forward. "This is completely unnecessary." Maya's expression never changed. "That depends on whether you believe. Accountability is unnecessary." A younger banker standing near the hallway quietly turned away so nobody would notice him unlocking his own terminal to check the alerts. The entire floor was beginning to realize this situation had escalated far beyond embarrassment. This was now survival. Derek finally tried to recover some confidence. "You are acting like this entire branch targeted you personally." Maya looked toward him slowly. "Did you not?" Derek opened his mouth, but hesitated again. Every answer suddenly sounded dangerous now. Maya continued calmly. "You questioned my presence before verifying my appointment. You implied I was dishonest before reviewing facts. You threatened removal before offering respect." She took one small step closer. "And all of it happened within 4 minutes of seeing me." Claire folded her arms tightly again. "We follow behavioral indicators here." The older gentleman near the windows gave a quiet, bitter laugh. "Funny how those indicators always seem to recognize black people first." Nobody challenged him, because nobody could honestly deny it anymore. Rain continued sliding down the glass outside, while downtown Chicago blurred beneath the gray morning sky. The lounge itself no longer felt luxurious. It felt exposed, like years of polished branding and carefully rehearsed professionalism had cracked open under pressure, revealing something uglier underneath. Maya remembered sitting inside another private office years earlier during the early stages of building Whitmore Capital. She had walked into an investor meeting carrying projections strong enough to impress anyone willing to actually read them. Instead, one executive asked whether she was the assistant bringing coffee for the presentation team. She remembered smiling politely while every nerve in her body burned with humiliation. That night, she rewrote her entire expansion strategy. Not because they rejected her intelligence, because they never bothered to look for it in the first place. Claire's voice pulled her back into the present. "This branch has an excellent reputation." Maya nodded once. "Most systems do until somebody finally records what happens inside them." Jordan suddenly looked up from his screen, his face pale again. "Claire," he whispered carefully, "corporate just locked the branch from deleting any internal records." The room went still. Derek stared at him. Mark slowly exhaled. Claire's confidence flickered visibly for the first time since Maya entered the lounge. Maya slipped her phone calmly into her coat pocket. "Good," she said quietly. "Now the truth has nowhere left to hide." Claire Benson stared at the compliance alert flashing across Jordan Ellis's terminal like it might somehow disappear if she refused to acknowledge it long enough. But the red executive banners remained locked across the screen for everyone nearby to see. "Record preservation active. Corporate review in progress." Authorization level, executive. Derek Hall stepped backward slowly, the confidence draining out of him with every passing second. Even the soft music overhead felt uncomfortable now. Too calm for a room unraveling this quickly. Maya Whitmore stood near the center of the lounge with one hand resting lightly against the back of the leather chair beside her. She looked completely composed while everyone else looked like they were trying not to panic. Claire suddenly straightened her posture again. Clinging to the last fragments of authority she still believed she had. Corporate reviews happen all the time, she said sharply to the room. This does not prove anything. Maya looked toward her calmly. You are right, she replied. The proof arrived the moment you decided I needed to be removed before I needed to be heard. Claire pointed toward the elevators again. You still have not identified yourself properly. That sentence changed everything. Jordan closed his eyes briefly like he already knew what was about to happen next. Mark Reynolds lowered his gaze completely. The older gentleman near the windows leaned forward slightly in anticipation. Maya slowly reached into the inside pocket of her charcoal coat and removed a slim black card holder. The movement was quiet, controlled, deliberate. She slid a matte black executive card onto the marble counter between herself and Claire. No dramatic gesture, no raised voice, just certainty. Claire looked down reluctantly, then froze. The card carried only a name and a silver insignia. Maya Whitmore. Whitmore Capital Group. Executive Control Division. Derek stepped closer to look at it and immediately lost what little color remained in his face. Everyone in Chicago finance knew the Whitmore name. Entire regional portfolios moved when Whitmore Capital shifted strategy. Westbridge Bank itself had spent the last 3 years under partial restructuring funded directly through Whitmore Investment Control. Claire looked back up slowly, disbelief colliding with fear in real time. No, she whispered under her breath. Maya's voice remained calm enough to cut through steel. Yes. The room stayed completely silent. Maya stepped closer to the counter now, her eyes locked on Claire Benson. You removed me from a wealth lounge controlled by the very company I oversee. The sentence landed like an explosion without a single raised word. Derek physically stepped backward. Jordan looked like he had forgotten how to breathe. A younger banker near the hallway quietly covered her mouth with her hand. Claire shook her head once. Nobody informed us you were coming. Maya tilted her head slightly. That was the point. Rain continued tracing silver lines down the massive windows behind them while downtown Chicago blurred beneath the storm clouds outside. Inside the lounge, every polished surface suddenly reflected the same thing back at the room. Shame. Maya continued speaking softly, but every word carried weight now. I came here because complaints kept disappearing from this branch. She glanced toward Jordan's terminal. Minority clients denied access. Appointments delayed. Verification requests questioned selectively. Claire immediately tried to interrupt. Those complaints were investigated. Maya looked directly into her eyes. By the same people being accused. Claire said nothing. Because there was nothing left to say. Maya slowly picked up the executive card from the counter again. You looked at my clothes before my credentials. My skin before my schedule. My presence before my professionalism. She paused briefly. And that tells me more about this branch than any audit report ever could. Derek finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper now. Maya, we did not realize. Maya turned toward him instantly. Exactly. The single word hit harder than shouting ever could. Because realizing too late was the entire problem. The Wealth Lounge stood completely still after Maya Whitmore revealed who she was. Nobody reached for coffee anymore. Nobody pretended to check emails. Even the rain outside seemed quieter now against the towering windows overlooking downtown Chicago. Claire Benson looked trapped inside her own reflection, standing behind the marble counter where she had spent the last 20 minutes trying to remove the very woman capable of dismantling her entire career. Maya calmly slipped the black executive card back into her coat pocket. No smile. No triumph. Just certainty. Her phone buzzed once again. She answered immediately. Maya speaking. Nora Hayes's voice carried clearly enough for the room to hear pieces of it. Corporate review team is active. We completed the preliminary audit poll. Maya nodded slightly. Go ahead. Claire's breathing visibly changed. Derek Hall stared at the floor. Jordan Ellis remained frozen beside the terminal while red compliance notifications continued multiplying across the screen behind him like warning flares. Nora continued calmly. We identified 7 client complaints tied to selective verification practices within the last 14 months. 4 involved delayed executive appointments. 3 involved accusations of suspicious access later determined to be invalid. The room tightened around those words. Maya's eyes never left Claire. And who approved the dismissals? A brief pause. Then Nora answered. Branch Manager Claire Benson. Derek closed his eyes for a second. Mark Reynolds looked away completely now. The older gentleman near the windows leaned back slowly, disappointment written across his face instead of surprise. He had seen this pattern before. Too many times. Claire finally tried to speak. Those complaints lacked supporting evidence. Maya's voice remained perfectly steady. Interesting. Because today you created evidence yourself. Claire shook her head immediately. This was a misunderstanding. Maya took one slow step toward the counter. No. A misunderstanding happens after verification. What happened here occurred before you even checked. Silence swallowed the room again. Then suddenly Jordan's terminal emitted 3 sharp, alert tones back to back. Everyone turned instinctively toward the screen. Access status updated. Branch authority review active. Temporary control override initiated. Derek's face drained completely. Claire stared at the words as if they were written in another language. Maya calmly looked toward Jordan. Please open the authorization details. Jordan hesitated only a second before obeying. His hands trembled slightly against the keyboard. A corporate memorandum expanded across the screen carrying Whitmore Capital authorization credentials and emergency oversight language. At the bottom sat one line bold enough for the entire room to see. Executive supervision temporarily transferred to Maya Whitmore. Claire whispered under her breath. Oh my God. Maya looked back toward her. You wanted me removed from this lounge. Her voice stayed soft. Instead, I just took operational control of the entire branch. Nobody moved. Nobody even seemed to breathe correctly anymore. Derek slowly lowered himself into one of the leather chairs nearby, like his knees no longer trusted him. Mark Reynolds quietly unclipped his security radio and set it on the desk without being asked. Jordan looked stunned that the woman everyone treated like a problem less than 30 minutes earlier now controlled every system around them. Nora's voice continued through the phone. Maya, corporate also recommends immediate suspension of managerial access pending investigation. Claire stepped forward suddenly. Please, this can be explained. Maya finally showed the faintest trace of emotion then. Not anger. Disappointment. That is the problem with bias, she said quietly. It always sounds unreasonable once the truth enters the room. She nodded once toward Jordan's terminal. Proceed with suspension authorization. Jordan looked at Claire briefly before pressing the confirmation key. A second. Later, the access badge hanging from Claire Benson's blazer emitted a sharp electronic tone and flashed red. Then Derek's terminal locked automatically beside the espresso station. One by one, the systems around the lounge began shutting them out in real time. No shouting. No revenge speech. Just consequences unfolding exactly where the disrespect began. The electronic lockout tone still echoed faintly through the Wealth Lounge as Claire Benson stared down at the red light blinking across her access badge. It no longer opened anything. Not her office. Not the executive terminals. Not even the private hallway doors behind the marble reception wall she once controlled like a kingdom. Derek Hall remained seated silently near the espresso station, unable to look anyone directly in the eye. The room that had once backed their authority now watched them with something colder than anger. Recognition. Maya Whitmore stood near the center of the lounge beneath the soft gold lighting, calm enough to make the entire moment feel even heavier. She had not raised her voice once. That was the part people would remember later. Jordan Ellis slowly stepped away from the terminal after completing the suspension authorization. He looked overwhelmed, like he had aged 5 years in 20 minutes. Maya noticed immediately. You did the right thing, she told him quietly. Jordan nodded once, still stunned. I almost stayed quiet. Maya's expression softened slightly. That is how systems survive, she replied. Good people convincing themselves silence is safer. The older gentleman near the windows folded his newspaper neatly and stood up at last. He looked toward Maya with the weary understanding of someone who had lived through moments like this before. Thank you, he said simply. Maya gave a small nod in return. Nothing dramatic. Just mutual understanding passing between two people who recognized the same wound beneath different years. Claire finally spoke again, her voice smaller now than anyone in the lounge had heard all morning. I never intended for this to happen. Maya turned toward her slowly. That sentence has followed discrimination for generations. Claire lowered her eyes immediately. Outside the towering windows, downtown Chicago remained wrapped in rain and steel-gray clouds. Traffic crawled through wet streets nearly 40 floors below, while inside the Wealth Lounge the atmosphere had completely transformed. Earlier that morning the room had felt exclusive, untouchable. Now it felt exposed, honest for the first time. Nora Hayes's voice came softly through Maya's phone again. Corporate review teams will arrive within the hour. Temporary branch oversight remains under your authority until completion. Maya thanked her quietly and ended the call. Then she looked around the lounge one final time. The silent clients. The shaken employees. Jordan standing beside the glowing terminal. Mark Reynolds near the elevators looking deeply uncomfortable with the role he almost played. Derek shrinking smaller into the leather chair every minute. And Claire Benson standing behind the same counter where she once believed appearance alone gave her permission to decide who belonged. Maya stepped closer to the center of the room. Her voice remained calm, but every word settled heavily into the silence around her. The problem was never that you did not know who I was. Nobody moved. The problem, she continued softly, is how quickly you were willing to disrespect someone you believed had less power than you. Claire closed her eyes briefly. Derek looked down at the marble floor. Jordan listened like he never wanted to forget the sentence. Maya slipped her phone back into her coat pocket and picked up the tablet she had carried into the lounge that morning. Simple charcoal sweater. Dark jeans. No designer labels. No visible symbols of wealth. Just presence. Just dignity. She looked toward Jordan before turning to leave. Effective immediately, you will assist corporate review until interim management is assigned. Jordan blinked in shock. Me? Maya nodded once. Character matters more than titles. The words hit him harder than any promotion ever could. Maya walked toward the elevators then, calm and unhurried while every eye in the lounge followed her. Nobody tried to stop her now. Nobody questioned whether she belonged. The marble floors remained polished. The jazz music still floated softly overhead. The skyline outside still shimmered beneath the rain. But something inside that branch had changed permanently. Because Maya Whitmore never raised her voice to demand respect. She raised the standard instead.